Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the regular meeting of the Board of Estimate and Apportionment for the final vote for the approval of the fiscal year 2022 budget or annual operating plan. Ms. Green, may please call the roll.
Mayor Jones,
Present.
Comptroller Green,
Here.
President Reed,
Here.
all present.
Great, seeing that we have a quorum. Our agenda is as follows. Item number 1, request from the Budget Director for approval of the FY 2022 proposed budget and personnel schedules with proposed amendments, and to submit and recommend Board Bill number 1 to the Board of Aldermen as the budget for the City of St. Louis for the fiscal year beginning July 1st, 2021. I'd like to, is there a motion to approve the
I move to adopt amendment, not amendment, but the budget line item number 1.
Great.
And then we have to go through and do all amendments. So.
Second.
Great. It's been moved and properly seconded. At this point, I'd like to offer an amendment. There are several proposed amendments to the budget that have been distributed prior to the meeting. And at this point, I'd like to ask Mr. Paul Payne, our Budget Director, to review those amendments with us.
Thank you, Mayor, Mr. President, Madam Comptroller. Yeah, I'm going to share screen now, if that can be set up. Do you see what, do you see the proposed amendment exhibit?
Yes.
Okay, very good. All right. There's a 5-page document. It has a series of amendments. The first one on page 1 is a technical correction, a couple of positions for SEMA. 1410 is the CARES Act fund. These were approved in March. That because it was in process, it didn't get incorporated into the budget. This is for tracking some of the CARES Act fund that weren't included in the budget. So that's more of a technical correction there. The next series of amendments, 2A, you're going to see a series of them. 2A through 2G are interrelated. And 2A is a reduction in the police department of amounting to $4 million, mostly in personnel accounts and some supporting accounts, reducing, and it started page 2, reducing a total of 98 vacant positions, uniformed officer positions. Those salary amounts were a reduction of $2.3 million, a net reduction of $2.3 million. We had built in some salary savings, so we had to decrease the amount of salary savings from that. Now, I will tell you that, and there's been a lot of discussion about that, typically the department has been authorized a certain number of officers, which they have not achieved, and over 100 vacancies. And then, so as the year progresses, they have these, they underspend their salary accounts, overspend their overtime, and that's how it. That's generally how it goes. And although overall they stay within budget typically, so this is reducing a lot of those vacancies that they have not utilized. Although they will need to reduce actual overtime because they're not going to have that leeway to spend going forward. 2B and 2C. That's just the mechanism because we've reduced the general fund budget for police by $4 million. The mechanism for getting these funds over to the use tax fund, where a lot of these programs are going to be funded. So in effect, what we're doing is reducing the subsidy of the use tax to the police department by that same $4 million. And so these two are related. That's just to get the money over to the use tax fund. So 2D, this is, so where the money's going, the $4 million, starts at 2D. And the first one being the Affordable Housing Commission, which is an increase of $1.5 million. 2E is amounts to $500,000, about $500,000 for the affirmative litigation unit of the city councilor's office. And you can see that includes about 5.5 attorney positions and administrative assistant encompassed there. Third, we've got a director of health victim support program of just under $1 million there. That includes some client service coordinators, 7 positions, totaling, so that is about $1 million. And then finally, we have Director of Human Services, Case Management Program, amounting to also another $1 million, and 15 positions, Client Service Coordinators. So that is basically where you're allocating those four items, those four uses are where you're allocating the $4 million you're reducing from the police department. Now, separately from those, that exchange of funds, also within the police department, is a request to break out some of the component units of the department itself. We had previously, you're familiar with having the marshals and the rangers, and they had their own budget number, but we're also breaking out other units as well. Budget and finance, supply and uniform, internal affairs, Air Force, the force investigation unit, the information technology section, the patrol, and then 911 dispatch and prisoner processing. So this is not a funding change. This is just breaking out the units, and you'll see them in the budget book as well when this is all put together. And then also separate personnel schedules for those. Also on item 4, the Director of Health and Hospitals. This is the supportive reentry program that was added earlier. But if you recall, that was all in one contractual service line item. This is actually fleshing that out a little bit by adding some positions, 12 positions listed there. And then this about $500,000 plus benefits. And that same amount is reduced on the contractual service line. So that's not a dollar change. That is just adding the positions instead of the contractual service line item. And finally, on 5A and 5B, this is a request from the President of the Board of Aldermen's office to provide funding for some computer technology services, as well as professional services and legal services in support of the redistricting task they have before them and some associated legal costs. And the reduction there is unemployment compensation. We track that every year. It finished below that $500,000 2 years ago. It was a little bit over that last year, or reverse that. It was a little under that 2 years ago, a little over that last year. This year it's been CARES Act, so it's been tracking below, has funded that. But so that's reasonable in terms of what we expect for expenditures. So the total sum of those changes is actually no bottom line change. The general fund is no dollar change, nor the use tax fund. It's just changes within those funds moving them around. And that's the extent of the proposed amendments.
Thank you, Paul, and thank you for all of your hard work. I know that you've been working with my staff at pretty late hours, and I want you to know that we appreciate all your work to get to this point. I'd like to entertain a motion to adopt the amendments as presented.
So moved.
And is there a second?
I'd like to break out amendment number 2A through
2A through
F through G.
through 2G and have a separate vote on those?
Yes.
Okay.
Then I remove my motion.
Yes.
I move to approve amendment 1.
Is that 1, 3, and 5?
1, 3,
4,
4, and 5.
5, 5A
Great.
and 5B.
Okay, it's been moved. Is there a second?
Second.
It's been moved and properly seconded to approve amendments 1, 3, 4, and 5. Ms. Green, please call the roll.
Mayor Jones,
Aye.
Comptroller Green,
Aye.
President Reed.
Aye.
Great. Okay, so President Reed, you wanted to discuss amendment 2.
Yeah, yes. First, I want to thank Paul Payne, your office, and others who are working to put money into some important services that we need to provide for St. Louis and the residents to operate more efficiently and more effectively. And I will not be able to vote in support of the reduction in uniform officers today, only because when I look at it, it's hard to tell how we're going to make up for the purchasing of fewer work hours within the police department. So for that reason, I will not be voting to support that amendment today. You know, at the Board of Aldermen, when the bill makes it over to the Board of Aldermen, we will continue to work to meet all of the goals that the amendment brings. But I'm assuming that it's going to pass today without my vote. But I'm not prepared to vote for it today. I don't have enough information on it.
Well, if you have any questions, I did request that Chief Hayden join us today. If you had any questions, we did work with the chief on this particular number. Chief, would you like to give us a bit of some background on how we came to this number and some of our discussions?
Surely. So basically, Dr. Isom had spoken to me about how many personnel that we could actually do without, and the point is do without if we had them. I think that everybody has heard me talk about, probably since I've been chief, we probably started off somewhere around 130 officers that I would say regularly that we were short. And that grew to 150 or so just over the past year or so. So, I mean, I've been regularly saying that we're short 150 officers. And so what Dr. Isom, you know, actually, in other words, it's like, it's a theoretical group of people. And so, you know, if somebody would say, well, how does that affect your current operations? It actually wouldn't affect current operations at all because there are people that I don't have. But I think what we're acknowledging is the fact that we've done a lot of things. We thought residency would significantly increase recruitment. It's steady, but it really hasn't taken on a role of its own. Last year impacted us in a significant way because through COVID, we only had 2 classes. Normally we have 3 classes. So that's kind of where it is today with the short 161. But at the end of the day, I support the mayor's notion that, hey, jobs or positions not actually realized yet is really something that could be utilized elsewhere potentially. And I support her idea, her initiative that perhaps we could send the right or a different professional to a scene. But in fact, the number, when I say 150 short, 160 short, I'm talking about a number that is something that I've tried to fill for now 3.5 years now. And so I support the possibility of doing other things with that potential, pool of money. It's just, I haven't been able to fill those spots, and we have not had to. And in fact, we've just, it's interesting that people might refer to that as a hiring freeze. I mean, in fact, we've been keeping up with attrition, and that's all we've been able to do in the past 3.5 years. And so it wouldn't prevent us from hiring more officers. We need to hire more officers to keep up with attrition, and we've done so. But no, I support the mayor's idea to do other things with people that I can't get.
Okay, Chief. So, how does this affect overtime and the amount of funds you need and you've used in the past for overtime? Because in the past, when those positions have not been filled, we still had to use a good portion of those funds to fulfill our overtime requirements because, again, it is the amount of total hours that it takes to run the department on an annual basis. So how does that affect overtime?
Well, I think that, so last year is probably a bad year to compare it to, because last year it was probably up, almost 30 to 40%, maybe double of what it normally would be due to the increase. And we had to go to several 12-hour days. You all know that June 1st started the George Floyd protests in St. Louis. And I think we did 160, we covered 160 protests or something in the last half of the year. So so I know that last year's number was particularly high, but I think normally it's between $7 or $8 million or so. And that's what the norm is. And hey, we're certainly looking at the potential. Hey, you know, we had to watch the Chauvin protest very closely. So there's not a lot of wiggle room there. But again, depending on what happens in some other part of the country, it could potentially impact our overtime very significantly. With that being said, again, last year was an anomaly. And so perhaps we won't have to use that much overtime this year.
So again, what concerns me is the total amount of hours, work hours that we will have available at our disposal without going over budget. Paul, do you have can you give me a 4-year, review of how we've spent the overtime across the last 4 years?
Actually,
Some
I
idea?
I did something recently. It was actually more than 4 years.
Okay.
I think I actually, let me pull this one up. If I can, bear with me. Okay, I pulled that up. Oh, here we are. Okay. Do you see an exhibit called Police Overtime History, Budget versus Actual?
Yes.
Okay. This actually, I did this recently. It goes back to FY12 and shows what the budgeted overtime was versus the actual spending of overtime has been. And you can see it's increased significantly since the last 10 years.
So
This year, it's actually budgeted a little higher at $11.7 million. The proposed budget has $11.7 million. This year was budgeted 11.2. The previous year is 12.4. But you can see the spending in FY20, which is the actual the previous fiscal year, actual numbers, was $4.3 million over the budget. Now, having said that, again, the police department came within their overall budget. They underspent their salaries and benefits and some other line items, so they came within budget overall. So
but if the salaries weren't there, they would have been over budget.
That's correct. So you're going to have to be more diligent on overtime, only because if you don't have that slack within your personal services, you cannot have that kind of overspending and going forward.
So
yeah.
Averages between 2 and 4. Well, the high was nearly $10 million, but between
that was a
2
unique
and
year.
4,
That was the protest year, the big protest year. But it's been between $3 and $4 million typically.
$3 and $4 million, but could reach nearly $10 million over time. And the amount of vacant positions have allowed us to be close to or make budget through those years. So again, I'm not trying to make a big stink about it. I'm just not going to vote in favor of it right now today, and then take some more time at the board to look at it.
Well, thank you. Thank you for that, President Reed. So we currently have, I'm sorry, is there any other discussion on Amendment 2? Okay, well, I would like to move to approve Amendment 2 to the budget, which includes the reduction of vacant positions. That's Amendment 2A through 2G.
Second?
It's been moved and properly seconded. All those in favor say aye. Ms. Green, please call the roll.
Mayor Jones,
Aye.
Comptroller Green,
Aye.
President Reed.
No,
Thank you. Okay,
I move to, I move to adopt the budget as amended.
Second?
it's been moved and properly seconded to adopt the budget as amended. Ms. Green, please call the roll.
Mayor Jones,
Aye.
Comptroller Green,
Aye.
President Reed.
Aye,
Great, thank
All in
you.
favor.
I move to adjourn.
No, not yet.
I was hoping now.
I
Had
just
to
wanted-
throw that.
I just wanted to say a few things before we adjourn.
Okay, go
Number
ahead.
one, again, I want to thank you and Comptroller Green for being so helpful as we transition. This is day number 9 for me, but who's counting? But I want to thank everybody who's tuning in for participating in your city government. You know, last Friday, I hear we broke a new record for comments on the budget, and want to thank everyone who engaged and was involved in the budgeting process. Again, and thank you, Paul Payne, for your hard work and working with us on putting these amendments together. Last week, we proposed a budget was zeroed out the budget for the workhouse and redirected those funds towards closing our budget gap, providing healthy meals and medical support for our detainees, doubling the Civilian Oversight Board budget, and establishing the Division of Supportive Reentry for our detainees, and investing in a community visioning process around the workhouse, municipal courts, and the old police department headquarters buildings. Today, you saw proposed a budget amendment that reflects more of my priorities and to address the root causes of crime and support victims of crime, as well as those who have been underserved and underrepresented. And as a brief reminder for everyone tuning in, we'll have our first stimulus advisory board meeting this Saturday, May 1st at 3 o'clock. And please keep a lookout for the Zoom link so you can stay engaged with how this group is seeking to invest the $517 million coming from our federal government. So again, I just want to thank you, Comptroller Green, and thank you, President Reed, for all of your help during this transition. And at some point, I can say that I'm not transitioning anymore, but I think I'll say that after 100 days. So again, thank you, everyone who participated in your government. And now, Louis, you can move to adjourn.
All right, perfect, perfect. Now I move to adjourn this meeting of the Board of E&A, and thanks to everyone who made this a smooth process.
Second?
Great, it's been moved and properly seconded. All those in favor say aye.
Aye,
Aye.
thanks all. Have a good day.
Did we just break a record for approving the budget? That was 24 minutes, y'all.
Oh yeah, I think that is a record.
Oh, wow.
So two records in this budget.
Let's keep
All right.
breaking them.
All right, see
All right.
you all. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.